Ummulbanin Merali is an internationally renowned scholar and teacher. She is a co-founder of Q Fatima and has an extensive background in tableegh. She also founded the Hujjat Saturday Workshop. Salawat.
Surah Al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين صلوات. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's like 3 Wilaadat, so you gotta smile a bit. Okay, all right. So I'd like to start with a story. Imagine it's a hot summer's day, really hot. Imagine there's an ant walking around, minding her own business. And imagine a drop of water falls before her. It's like a waterfall. She stops in her tracks. And then she looks up, because it's natural to look up. Where did that water come from? And she sees a magnificent, awesome eagle flying in the sky. And she falls in love. Sorry, politically not correct. She doesn't fall in love. She rises in love. Okay, all right. So she rises in love with him, and she's besotted. She dreams about him. She Googles eagles. She just wants to know everything about him. But then she thinks, I have a really tiny ant heart. It's so little, and that's such an awesome eagle. Even if he looks down, will he even notice me? And the thing that besots her, or rather takes her back, was the fact that this eagle is free. It's flying. And one of the names of Abu Abdullah, whom I've been asked to talk about today, is Abu al-Ahrar, the father of freedom. And this is how my father introduced me to Abu Abdullah as the father of freedom, with this story. My father died when I was 10. Growing up, I remember the 10 days that led up to the day of Ashura. My father used to ensure that the center that he designed, or the Husayniyah that he designed, he cleaned himself. He would put up the black banners. He was a successful businessman, but he would close all his businesses because for days before he would practice the marthiyas and know-hows that he would recite. And everything else was forgotten. Our old clothes were dyed black. We weren't allowed to buy black clothes. They were dyed black. And I would ask him, why? Just to cry? Just to be sad? And he would tell me then, it's about being free, about being at peace, about being owned by nobody. He would say it's about being the best. In fact, his words were to be attached to those through whom you see God, that which God ordained you to be. And he would tell us to aspire to connect to the Rabb of Husayn. He said, this Rabb who wished you to be free like the eagle, like Abu al-Ahrar. And he told us to wear the freedom of this eagle, of Abu al-Ahrar, like a heart on our sleeve. I didn't understand much then, but all I know that I learned that this heart was the Husayni heart. I was too young to understand this wisdom. Like I said, he died when I was 10. And it took many, many years and moments of utter brokenness and despair when I was right down to understand even a minuscule of what my father was trying to tell me so many years ago. I'm 60 now, this is about 50 years ago. But the words still, they bemuse me. I wonder what he was trying to say. So let's look at this. So I believe that the human being is programmed to be inclined towards those who reflect divine attributes. There's an Indian song. Am I encouraging you to listen to it? Well, maybe. It says, Tujh mein Rab dikhta hai. Oh, you're all nodding. Okay. So I see my Rab in you. And in essence, can I say fall in love? I'll use that phrase. We fall in love with those who bring out our own godliness, those who bring out the best in us, those who are free, and those who teach us to be free. That's who we fall in love with. Allah says in Hadith al-Qudsi, I was a lost treasure. I created to be recognized. So now, what is this? What do I do? And as I said before, it was in my darkest moments that I thought of what my father said. And it's consciously attaching yourself to the Rabb of Husayn in all that is tangible and intangible, so that you are free from everyone, all human beings, all things. That is in essence what is to be Husayni. Now the means to achieve this is given to you and me by something called free will. And that's the freedom between stimuli and choice. And the response that we take is either a freedom of being tied, but it will lead to our character, our biography, our prisons, and if we choose, our peace. As Shias, we believe that the event of Ashura was probably the greatest redemptive act in history. What happened on the battlefield of Karbala is as if it's happening now. We say, Kullu yawmin Ashura, kullu ardin Karbala every day. We tend to say this all the time. But in essence, this allows us to measure ourselves against the principles and paradigms of Abu al-Ahrar, of Imam Husayn, to achieve peace. Now, there's two major principles. The first principle of this freedom is to have an internal awareness of divine truth. The Quran has 114 chapters. 86 are Makki, 28 are Madani. The Makki chapters look at the why of religion. The Madani chapters look at the how. We focus more on the how than on the why. So here it's about the why first. It's a recognition of this truth. And this truth is that which the Makkans opposed. The Makkans believed in one God. Quran says itself. If you ask them who created the heavens and earth, they will say God. The Quran is full of this. What they could not understand is A, that they should follow anybody's rules or divine rules. But the main thing they didn't understand was the akhirah. To them, this was a concept so difficult to stomach. How on earth were you going to be raised again when you were dead? So this was hard for them. And with that, they couldn't understand about accountability. They just couldn't understand. How would I be accountable? I'm dust, I'm bones. They would come up to the Prophet with a bone, crush it in front of him and say, how does this rise again? How can this be made again? So the Quran questions them. In Surah At-Tawbah, this is ayah 38. He says, أَرَضِيتُمْ بِالْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا مِنَ الْآخِرَةِ. He's asking you and me as well. He says, ask yourself, are you content with the life of the world instead of the hereafter? And he continues to say, the provision of the life of the world is little compared to the hereafter. So this first principle is based on conviction that there is a life after death, that this is transient and that is permanent. And I think the Quran sums it up in one sentence that we all use, which is Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Indeed, we are from Allah and to Him we will return. Now, before I go any further, this is not exclusive to us. If you read the Bible, and I hope you do, in Luke, he says, whoever seeks to save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life will preserve it. And we find the disciples of Jesus who declared the truth, they were persecuted. Matthew was killed by a sword in Ethiopia. This is just information for you. Mark was dragged by horses through the streets of Alexandria until he was killed. Luke was hanged in Greece. Peter was crucified. John nearly faced being boiled in a basin of boiling oil in Rome. Matthias, who replaced Judas, was stoned and beheaded. These things happened in every historical place. If you look at during the reign of Mary Tudor, 300 Protestants were burnt at the stake, including the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Cranmer. This was because they requested for the Quran to be read in their homes rather than in churches. So the Catholics had their Bibles in the churches, and you couldn't have your own study circle. And the Protestants protested. So if you look at the Fox's Book of Martyrs, you will find that every detail of the suffering, just as we detail Ashura, is there. You find, I was reading about the Bishop of London, his legs were slowly burnt off on a pyre before he was able to move the rest of his body into the blaze to die, all because he wanted to read the Bible at home and start study circles. So we find in Greek history, in the person of Socrates, when he was charged with disbelief in the Athenian gods, he said, let us start a discussion. I know the wisdom of life. Now all of you know that whilst drinking the hemlock, This is the poison. He is surrounded by his weeping students. So he's telling them exactly what's happening to him. He says, my mind is intact, but my body is slowly dying. And they tell him, why? Why are you doing this? You are our teacher. And he said, so that others will have the declaration of truth and they will have the freedom to gain wisdom, because they will ask, why did such a man kill himself? So that's the first principle. And in essence, if I was going to conceptualize it, it's to know that you and I want to be immortal. This is ingrained into us. And the only way we can be immortal is to leave a legacy which is connected to the akhirah, and to understand that the akhirah is permanent and the dunya is temporal. We're doing Surah Al-Isra as a study with children in the month of Ramadan. And maybe you'd like to look at ayah 18 and 19. They're very, very clear. I'll just do the English, where Allah says, whoever desires the immediate, so if you want immediate gratification, He says, we'll give it to him, because we want it right now. It's like the blue ticks on WhatsApp, right? You want an answer now. So He says, if we'll do that, but that will lead to agitation. In fact, He talks about Jahannam here. The second ayah says, وَمَنْ أَرَادَ الْآخِرَةَ وَسَعَى لَهَا سَعْيَهَا وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَأُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ سَعْيُهُمْ مَشْكُورًا. But if you connect everything, if you desire the hereafter, and you try hard for it, sa'i, is exerting yourself, we will appreciate it. We will give it back. So the essence is live to die and not die to live. But how do I do this? How do I manifest the spiritual, this intellectual thought process of freedom into action? How do I execute the intention? And Imam Husayn teaches us. It's a social dynamic called jihad. Now, jihad is a very misunderstood word. Jihad, in essence, is a struggle in the cause to be free. That's what he taught us. So let's see what he did. So when he saw that the freedom brought by the Prophet of allegiance and submission only to God was being ended by the prison of allegiance to the government or the state, over and above the laws of God, he became a freedom fighter. That's what I call him. So he's a freedom fighter, one who recognizes and declares the truth of freedom and stands by it. And he became an example, because one of his first sentences are, or one, as you might call it, a hadith is, and for you I shall become an example. Quran says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, in the Messenger of God, you have the most perfect example. Imam said exactly the same thing. وَلَكُمْ بِي, and for you I shall be an example. Okay. It's very easy to execute freedom for yourself. It's not difficult. You can do that. You can believe and you can manifest your actions into what we might want to call good deeds. But Quran has a different, if I say a different way it portrays divine success. And all of you know the surah, we recite it all the time, is Suratul Asr. Because we started by saying, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, wal Asr. You all know this, right? I swear by the squeezing. Asr is to squeeze. Asir is juice, right? Asr is, the time of Asr is when the day is squeezed into the night. And we classify it as time. So I swear by time, which is in essence all that we have, all that we own. Innal insana lafi khusr. And where Allah uses al-insan here, He's talking individually to you and me. So He's saying your default is failure. Khusr is failure. So the default for every human being is failure. That's a statement. Innal insana lafi khusr. But then He says, illa alladhina. So there's four things that will lead to success, which Imam Husayn teaches us, and Sayyida Zainab and Hazrat Abbas and all the other people in Karbala. Illa alladhina amanu. Belief. That belief has, and that's a belief we talked about. It has to be manifested. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat. Amilus salihat is where there's a conscious doing of good, manifestation of that belief. And that doesn't stop there. And the surah is very, very explicit that these four go together. وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. So تَوَاسَوْا بِالْحَقِّ and تَوَاسَوْا بِالصَّبْر, with the little I know. Tawasi is where I counsel someone because I care so much for them. We say wasiyah. You do that on your deathbed. You care for someone so much that you want to see them be successful. So tawasi is counseling someone to goodness and counseling someone to keep away from that which is wrong. And we did this. We translated it into day-to-day life by building Husayniyas, by building centers. So that's how we did it. So if somebody was to ask me, tell me one thing that is Husayni in your life, it'll be the center, because we call it a Husayniya. We come into here. So these centers that we occupy, they're sort of the central hub of our lives, and they're in line with the teaching of the Prophet, because when he migrated from Makkah to Medina, the first thing he did was build a mosque. My forefathers and your forefathers did the same thing. When we were thrown out of any country or we migrated, the first thing we did was either to rent a little space or to have a little portico bin like this in anticipation of something bigger, or we had something to sit down and be able to do what Surah Al-Asr tells us to do, just in line with what Imam Husayn did. I remember again my father, and he traveled the world. Whenever he returned from a journey, I saw the enthusiasm with which he would talk about new gadgets, about the new carpets, but it was for the Husayniya, which always came before our home. And I see that with the Salam Center as well. It's an amazing concept, but that's how it is. So how do we make our centers free? How do we become Husayni, actually call them Husayni? So I've got some practical stuff that maybe I can share with you and you can discuss. So I think the example has to be set by our actions. We've got to have pride in our community. Children learn through imitation. They're a committed audience till they're about 12, and then we lose them. So madaris are really, really important. We need to stop giving contradictory messages. When the Prophet was asked about Islam, it was one sentence: obedience to the Creator and serving His creation. Young people are phenomenal. They have a phenomenal sense of empathy. You only have to see crowdfunding, even for orangutans. Have you seen it? It's amazing. They raise so much. And we need to use this to develop a sense of responsibility to the world around us. We talk a lot. We need to walk the talk. We need to speak in the language that they understand. We've sort of pushed them to be the best of students outside. They're probably learning some of the most modern techniques of innovative and critical thought outside. But when they come to a center, we tell them conform. Don't ask questions. These are too difficult for us. We need to allow them to voice their concerns and questions. We need to respond to them rationally, intelligently. Got to be less judgmental, a bit more open-minded. Got to be more inclusive. Very often we promote our tradition above our values. I think I was just having a discussion about a center somewhere else. We forget. That's not going to work. Now, as a woman, I won't be true to my gender if I didn't put this age-old issue of gender discrimination and prejudices. Community decisions are still made by men. Women still treated like second-class citizens. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about a wider community. The mimbar has to cater for future generations. Salah and Quran are recited without any understanding. I have to say that the dua for Shaban today was beautiful, but I'm not sure how many of us understood it. It was beautiful. And I'm a Khoja, very proud of it. And the Khoja tradition is to pare and pare and pare and pare. Okay? But we need to, our scholars need to sit together. We need to explain the basics first. There's so many ologies we go into, all these difficult concepts, yet the basics of Salah are not understood, or the basics of recitations are not understood. So maybe this platform needs to be made into something that's simple. I mean, if I were to ask you, and please don't raise your hands, how many actually understand the Salah they recite? This is the month of Shaban. There's a beautiful, absolutely beautiful dua called Munajat al-Shabaniyah. Every single Imam has recited this. And yet, many of us are oblivious to it. The works of the scholars of the past have to be updated. They have to be continually updated, perfected or confirm it. The scholars within us need to do this. If we rely on any century's thoughts, then we stop reaching the minds of future generations. Problem is, anyone who has the courage to confront this is accused of tearing the fabric of the society, and we vilify them. We actually ban them. Really? Okay. So our centers are really competing for airtime, all of them. And we need to create a space if we don't want to lose a generation. I was talking to somebody today at the center who came with a lot of other pastors from Kentucky in the States. And they were saying the same thing. The younger generation have stopped coming. And it's so difficult. They call it faith in transition. We don't even know if our grandchildren will do what we do. Now, second thing of manifesting this is the social justice that Imam Husayn alayhi salam taught us. In the Quran, if you look at jihad, it is, or the struggle to establish freedom, it's linked with the struggle in the cause of the oppressed. I recently went to an event where there was raising funds for Yemen. Maybe you go to lots of events as well. Yet when we saw the presentation on Yemen, it was just before we were offered a 5-course meal. The two didn't sit together. It didn't make sense. You're smiling. Okay, all right. I'm going to skip some of this. So Abu Abdullah also teaches me that as a mother, I'm not even human if I remain silent when I watch another mother standing over the ruins of her home, looking at the bodies of her children and wondering, are there no free human beings in the world? Are we all enslaved? I mean, how many times have we watched these images and switched the TV off because it's too distressing for us to watch? It's so difficult. Yet we read in every ziyarah that had we been in Karbala, we would have stood by Abu Abdullah. We cry for Ali al-Asghar because he didn't have water. Yet we waste water. These are the practicalities of being a Husayni. There is so much we do that we need to think about. So I believe that I, you, all of us really, are accountable, and that this freedom of truth transcends creed, color, cultures. And if you want to bring peace to ourselves, we have to oppose those who play God. We've got to speak out against their tyranny in whatever way we can. And if for a moment we think that our little one voice will not make a difference, then we have to look at history. If you look at the armies of Rome, they've gone. But Jesus or Prophet Isa lives. The armies of Quraysh have long disappeared, but the words of Muhammad carry on. He was an orphan. They said he was uneducated. They said he didn't have a status, yet he lives on. The army of Yazid are gone, but there was one man who stood in the deserts of Iraq, looking at all the bodies around him, and he's the one who inspires freedom of truth. But because it's his birthday celebration and you're all looking a bit sad and morose, I'd like to end with another childhood story. And this is something that my father told me day in and day out, and I'd like to talk a little bit about his timeline. So what I remember about this Wilaadat is the story of Futrus. Please don't ask me about, in your question answer, what my resources and where I got it from. I got it from my dad, okay? Look it up. So I'm told that there was an angel. Angels don't do wrong things, they obey orders. But this particular angel took his time to do things, and that wasn't acceptable. So he was sent to a remote place in the heavens, and his wings were taken away. He was very sad. And he could see all the angels come and go, and suddenly there's this massive celebration. There's no balloons here, no banners. I'm sure there were balloons and banners in the heavens. And he said, what is going on? And Jibreel said, don't you know? Husayn has been born. And we're going to congratulate Fatima. And he said, can I come with you? And Jibreel said, well, I'm not sure. I'll ask. Divinity allows it. In the name of Husayn, everything goes. And riding on the back of Jibreel, please have your imagination on. Riding on the back of Jibreel, he comes down to congratulate Fatima. And he touches the cradle of Husayn. And when he touches the cradle of Husayn, his wings come back. Not only do the wings come back, but they come back with an extra energizing radiance that when he comes back to the heavens, everybody says, Futrus, where did that come from? And he said, I had the privilege to touch the cradle of Husayn. That was what I was taught. And I don't forget it. I'd like to look at his timeline and then some take-homes. So Imam lived for 56 years. We need to have some things in our head that we know. I suggest you remember 7, 36, 46, 56. You do that? Can't be that difficult. So it's the age of 7 that Imam loses his grandfather and his mom. Okay. At 36, he loses his dad. At 46, it's when Imam Husayn is martyred. And in 56, it's the day of Ashura. Most people say they know only about Ashura and not about the rest of his life. Imam wrote some phenomenal poetry. Absolutely phenomenal. In particular about Rabab and Sakina, or Ruqayya as we know her, Ruqayya or Sakina as we know her, is phenomenal. He expresses his love for them in a way that I have not read anywhere else. Please have a look. Finally, some practical pointers to take home, because all this is easy and it's just saying stuff. But how are you going to change? What are we going to do? Lesson from Futros, what are we going to do? So one thing that we learn from Imam's words on the day of Ashura is that whenever you drink water, remember me. We all know this, right? So every time you pick up some water, energize it. Energize it by saying, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. I think all of you have probably read, and Google it if you want, Masaru Emoto is a Japanese scientist who worked with water. And what he did was he took separate containers of water and he said good words on some and names of good people on some and bad words and name of bad people on some, whether it was Hitler or Mother Teresa or whatever he did. And then he froze those crystals. And the crystals on which there were, inverted brackets, bad people, the crystals were ugly. The crystals which had good words and good people on them, they were beautiful. We've been taught this for a long, long time. What you recite on water has an effect on you. So if you take one thing back, then at least when you drink water, just say Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. And the next thing is, when Imam requested for the last night of Ibadah, all of us hear this on the day of Ashura. He sends Hazrat Abbas and asks for a night of Ibadah. He says there is a reason why I'm doing this. And he said 4 things that he likes. Uhibbu salah. I love salah. Wa tilawati kitabi. I love to recite the book. Wa kathratu du'a wal istighfar. And that is why I want this night. So 4 things. Salah, Quran, du'a and istighfar. When a man asks, and a man as phenomenal as Abu Abdullah, for one night's respite, just to do something, these are the 4 things he asked for. Now, when I sat here, I was told that you don't have an occasion tomorrow to celebrate the birthday of Hazrat Abbas and Imam Zainul Abidin. So I'm just going to say a little bit about them so you don't forget them. The greatest accolade that was given to Hazrat Abbas is something that is written in his haram very often, which is Irqab bi nafsi ya akhi. When Hazrat Abbas was mounted onto the horse, he was helped by Imam Husayn. He told him, ride bi nafsi, with me, oh my brother, as me. It's a phenomenal sense. He's just linked to Imam Husayn. You can't take it away. Books of hadith describe him as a handsome man, tall, towering figure who inspired hope. He was an unshakable mountain, and he had a soft, massive heart. We see him as somebody different. Do you know what Abbas means? It means somebody who frowns. But literally somebody who frowns at the enemy on the battlefield, at the enemies of God. But he's recognized as a symbol of loyalty. So if you want to measure somebody's loyalty, benchmark is Abbas. Okay. And Imam Sajjad, my goodness. So one thing about Imam Sajjad. Imam Sajjad faced a fragmented community. He didn't know what to do. Everybody was in bits. So he did 3 things. The first thing he did was he announced his imama. And I think you all know the story of Muhammad Hanafi. I won't go into it. But the second thing he wanted to unite this community in a way that would stay. And he did it through majlis. Him and Sayyidah Zainab did this, and he put everybody together. And finally, he wrote a book, Sahifat al-Sajjadiyah. The guidance, Sahifat al-Sajjadiyah may be a book of du'as, but there's a lot of guidance in it, there's a lot of understanding in it. It's called the Zabur of the Ahlul Bayt. I don't know how many of us have it, but maybe in celebration of his birthday tomorrow or day after, we may go and buy a copy and try and understand it. I'd like to end here, maybe with reciting a salam to Abu Abdullah. So if you could recite it with me, I'd appreciate it. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bifnaik. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر لحظة مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. جزاكم الله خير. بصلوات.
Thank you very much. We have some time for questions if there are any. Questions?
They understood it all. Perfect.
Okay, I think we'll end there then. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.